Welcome to the August 17th weekly JupyterLab call. Today we have 14 people on the call. And if you are just joining, please find the agenda in the chat and sign in and add an agenda item if there's anything you'd like to discuss. We don't have an additional discussion section. Let me add that. If there's something you'd like to talk about that is a bit longer than just an agenda item, say 5 minutes, then please add it to the additional discussion section. And with that, why don't we get started? The first person on the agenda today is Jason Oil.
Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. I had a couple of action items that came out of the triage meeting last week. Triage is every week on Thursday, by the way, for those who are unfamiliar. One is, should we modify Probot to not tag issues from veteran contributors with the needs triage tag? Because typically when we look at issues in triage, if the person filing it is very experienced, we kind of accept that what they file is conformant and we don't need to triage it. Wikipedia does similar processes where they subject experienced editors to progressively less scrutiny on their creations. I also opened an issue and immediately deleted status needs triage from it to have further discussion.
Are you defining like experienced contributor?
That's a good question. We would have to come up with a rubric. Certainly things like people who are on the council or distinguished contributors would be on that list. You know, we could also come up with a rubric of like, if you've had X number of issues accepted with a percentage accept rate, then you get the auto acceptance. It's not like the worst case is that like everything you submit still has to go through needs triage. So like we're not punishing people who have lower success rates.
There's also metadata from the GitHub environment that you can use to determine what type of user is creating it. Mm-hmm. So there's like owner, affiliate, I forget what those are, but that could be an option instead of an allow list.
Okay. I see you got your hand up, Darian.
Yeah, I was going to say the other thing that you should keep in mind is, you know, basically everyone who is on the call right now and people who are regular contributors, if you see that label pop up, you can probably just remove it and rely that everyone else will think, yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
The point of the triage label is so that we don't miss anything, that we truly don't know where it belongs, whether it needs to be resolved, whether it's a JupyterLab issue or different repo, etc. But if your level of familiarity with the project is such that right now you can modify labels, go ahead and modify them. If you feel that you ought to have that and you don't, just ask. We'll almost certainly say yes. So like the bot action is meant to make this automatic and seamless. But if it turns out that A, it takes us some time to do that, or B, you are filing an issue and that still shows up and you feel it shouldn't, just take the label off because it'll save us time in the triage meeting anyway.
I mean, if you have gained the permission to add and remove labels, you're probably an experienced contributor. Although I did note when I filed that new issue and I deleted the label, I had to do it twice because the label was first part of the template, then I removed it, then Probot swept in and tagged it a second time and I had to remove it. So it is a little bit annoying. You got to get the timing just right. So I feel like modifying Probot to not go in and tag it might be an improvement. But if you would like to share thoughts or suggestions about that, please use the issue link provided. One other topic from Triage is old pull requests. As of moments ago, we have 86 pull requests for JupyterLab alone, some of which are quite old. The newest one is an hour ago. The oldest one is from December 22nd, 2018. So these old issues should probably old pull requests should probably just get closed out. Like if we haven't accepted this thing after 3.5 years, probably not going to do it or just ship it. More importantly, though, much like with Triage, we want to make sure that newbies who submit their first pull request, that gets attention within the first few days so as to encourage them to do more pull requests. So no explicit action requested right now, just a call to action. Please take a look at pull requests, especially both old and new.
That sounds like an explicit action you're requesting.
I'm not requesting a mechanism, like I'm not doing a pull request triage call yet. Hopefully it won't come to that.
Cool. Any thoughts, feedback? Okay,
I mean,
thanks.
kind of tangential. I know you were joking about the triage pull request meeting, but I do know some projects that have like, once they realize there's a backlog they need to go through, they'll be like, oh, we're having like a one-off event, and they'll just kind of do it as needed, where they're like, we're going to fix all these things and try and make it like fun for everyone. So that is a possibility if you're feeling like it's overwhelmed. I've heard some people having success. Yeah, something-a-thon.
Yeah.
Darian, it's a little, I don't like the words always because it's so vague at this point, but yes.
Yeah, I've had, both bug fix-a-thon and bug file-a-thon events, not at the same company because that would be really counterproductive. But yeah, just encouraging folks to take a look at the pull requests because they are numerous.
Cool. Well, thank you for bringing this up again. The maintenance of the repo is not fun, but it's really, really good. Thank you. Okay, I'll remind you again, if you would like to talk about anything, please add to the agenda. But second on the agenda today is me. So we've been making good progress, a group of us, on the Lumino 2 project. I linked the project board. I see right before this call started, Steve merged a PR I had open. That's the second link there, the native iterators PR. So if you're not aware, there are some API accessors in, say, widget, for example, like panel children, or there are some data structures throughout Lumino, like the queue, the linked list used for messaging, and a few other things that used a set of custom homegrown iterators that closely, but not exactly, followed the shape of native iterators at a time before we had native iterators in all the browsers that Lumino was meant to support. And now that we are only supporting ES6, we can use the native iterators. So that PR takes out a lot of custom code and replaces it with native code. And I appreciate the multiple reviews I got from multiple people on it, because it's subtle. Some of it's subtle. And so it went in, and I would like to do an alpha Lumino 2 release soon, because even though it won't require a ton of refactoring, it will require changing a bunch of things in code that uses Lumino. So one common utility function a lot of people use is toArray, and that is a really useful thing on Lumino iterators because it's difficult to pass them to things that don't accept Lumino iterators. But now that all array-like objects are already iterable iterators, that is not as necessary, although we've kept that function for one cycle and labeled it deprecated just to make the lives of people who are changing their code a bit easier. And I wrote a substantial top-level comment just to describe all the API changes because this hits a lot of people, and use that top-level comment as the basis for the beginning of a migration from Lumino 1 to Lumino 2. So yeah, hopefully we can ship an alpha soon and update the JupyterLab code base as well. There's a bunch of stuff on that board. I will again ask if you have any interest in working on this stuff, please take a look at the board. Please claim an issue if it hasn't been. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. There are probably other people on this call who are knowledgeable and can answer you. And it would be really nice if Lumino wasn't some black magic that only a handful of people know. It is the basis for the Jupyter frontends that we are shipping. So hopefully more people will get involved. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say about that. I'll wait for a second because the next subject is totally different. But if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to talk about it. Okay. My last point is if you are in the JupyterLab Council, please consider either nominating another person to the council or consider nominating a member of the council for the Software Steering Council, because we should pick someone to represent this project in the Software Steering Council. We are aiming for the beginning of December being a time when the new governance takes over from this sort of transitional period that we're in right now between the steering council and the new governing structures that have all passed. The steering council has voted in favor of them, but they don't magically come into existence. So this is part of the very not magical, mundane way they come into existence. Is I ask for people to nominate and we hold. Yeah, that's it for me. Any questions about that? Jason Grout has a comment and he says, we're aiming for having the sub-project councils in place by October. That's right. So we have our sub-project council and it is pretty large. I'm sure it should be larger. So I don't think it's so small as to be unfair right now, but it could certainly be more fair. So yeah, that's right. We're not waiting until December to be there. We want to do that faster. Yeah, any questions, comments?
Is this a place to ask questions about that process, or would you prefer that's on a mailing list? Like, is this the right call to ask that?
Sure.
Okay. With the nominations, is it similar in that someone like nominates one person, or is it like, I want to nominate these people for us to vote between? Like, is there anything like that that's different?
Okay, so there's two things that you can nominate people for. One is you can nominate somebody to be on the JupyterLab Council, and we do that one at a time. And each new person that's added, the composite group has to, again, handle voting on a new nominee. When it comes to nominating someone for to be our representative for JupyterLab in the Software Steering Council, I don't recall if we've written much guidance about this. I'll check and get back to you on that. But what I would say is you should check with the person you want to nominate to see if they're even willing, right? Like they might just not want to be nominated for that. It's a bit different from nominating someone for the JupyterLab Council because you're basically signing them up to do work. Whereas the council, it's minimal enough that we can just, without informing someone, nominate them, vote on them. And if they get accepted, tell them. But to be a representative for this project on the Software Steering Council, you have to show up to a new set of meetings and you'll have some responsibility. So all I would say is the people you can pick from are people on the JupyterLab Council, and just double check with them if they want to be nominated, and then bring that up in either in the mailing list right now, because we don't have a private repo where we can have discussions yet. But I think we should make a private repo so that we can use GitHub discussions for this instead of the mailing list. I think it's more discoverable and more natural for the people on the project. Does that answer your question? I said a lot of words.
Yeah, no, and sorry, I wasn't being specific. I meant the second one specifically, but it's probably good to have it documented anyway about nominating for the software. No, words. Yes, Software Steering Council. Sorry, words. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure if there was a set way for that, but that makes sense for figuring it out. Thank you.
Cool, thank you. Okay. Let's move on to Max.
Hi, everybody. So I stuck my foot in the wood chipper of attempts to add toast libraries to JupyterLab a couple weeks ago. And so this is the follow-up to that. Based on what everyone said, all the feedback and suggestions that I got, there were a couple of options that were essentially already assembled, either in the form of like experiments or in the form of actual functioning extensions. And the most promising of those was something called JupyterLab Toastify, which was an extension by Frederick. And so what I would like to do is pull this into the UI components library. There's a draft PR up with, it's still completely non-functional at this point, but it's basically just Frederick's code copy and pasted into that library, and then some modification. But essentially just like he's relying on like font awesome, so we don't need to internally for icons and stuff. Just changes like that. And if everyone wants to see the little GIF, let's see. Yeah, so I think the styling fits as is, fits pretty well with our overall styling. I need some tweaking for themes and stuff, but I think it is unobjectionable at the very least.
I'm not objecting to it, but I'm curious about, like, would you consider using the browser's push notification system in addition to or instead of the in-app push notifications?
The browser's push notifications, like, for example, what are you talking about exactly?
Like, you know, those wonderful pop-ups that everyone loves getting when you go to your favorite website and Chrome says, this website would like to pop up notifications on your desktop. Would you like to let it?
I don't know. I use Firefox. I don't use Chrome.
All right. Well, I think Firefox supports the same protocol. It's like an open protocol.
I think you showed it in your GIF, didn't you, Max? The one where it was like showing an error from the top of the browser in tandem with that. Oh,
no, that's our modal.
Oh, they both are. Okay.
That's
I'm at least not. If there is a good native thing for this, then sure, I'd definitely consider using that. But I'm not familiar with it.
They're not. I can paste a link, but it's not as rich. You don't get customization for things like appearance, color, positioning.
Okay, so the feedback I got the last time I brought this up was that we want a JupyterLab component, right? We don't want just a UI component. We want something that's customized with the look and feel of JupyterLab.
Yep.
So I think this is and it's React based. I think this is a good, overall direction.
I think,
but I'll look into the native.
They're too minimal to do the sort of rich things that we're looking to do.
That's what I assume, but
one big advantage is that if you're doing something in the background, then JupyterLab can notify you using a desktop notification, even if it's not visible in your browser at that moment.
I don't know if I want that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to get people to hate JupyterLab, but
For sure.
but we might consider using native notifications as some sort of conflated set of notifications. Like you have 200 unread messages or something like that. But even that, we should, I think, be careful.
JupyterLab has somehow set your computer on fire. Be notified.
I mean, my computer sounds like it's taking off sometimes, so fair enough. But two comments, Max. Oftentimes when we bring in an extension, now this is a library, I get that, but when we bring in an extension, we try to preserve Git history.
Yeah, how do I
would say
do that?
Well,
Or how
yeah,
should
I
I
would
do
say if you talk with Fred and he's happy with this, then just use the co-author attribute that GitHub supports. In your commit message, there's a line, you do a line break after your comment, and then you write co-author-by or something like that. You list co-author and it links it automatically. So that's a way of doing it. But I would talk to Fred and see what he thinks.
Sure, I was wondering about that as I was working on that. So the reason I just pulled it into the library instead of just using the extension as was is because I think it makes just more sense as part of the UI component library. Like, why should it be in two different places? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable approach. I would just want to hear what.
Yeah, no, I was hoping Fred would be on the call, but I guess I'll try and talk to him one-on-one later.
Cool. Any other questions, comments on this? Oh yeah, I guess that's true. Are we doing squash merges every time though? I think for a long time we didn't do that. Is that our default, I guess?
It's not the default, but I usually pick it.
Okay, I see.
We can make it the default.
Yeah, if we're bringing, what we do for the default is one thing, but if we're bringing in a library or code from somewhere else that has history, I would recommend we do not apply the default case of squashing in that case.
Like I would like to preserve the history as much as possible. I just wasn't sure how to do it.
Yeah, no, totally. And if you do decide to do that, it's a delicate thing where the time is a real factor because you can never rebase a PR like that. That PR, once it's open, has to either go in or you start over. So it's always been kind of delicate when we do it, but we do that. Okay. Jason,
but no knee jerk. So as for the actual content, rather than the Git specifics, like, does anybody have any particular objections to this? Like, I know maybe you'll have to have like I don't know if they'll have to rise to the point of a vote, but there were certainly lots of opinions.
I mean, as a consumer of this library, helping with the JupyterLab notifications extension that the Cal Poly team built last year, I think it's good. I don't know. I really don't feel well informed enough to have a strong opinion, which is, I just kind of want to see what Fred's thinking, basically. Like, because he's now in the fast UI mind space, and I want to know, does
so what he said specifically about that, he did comment on that specifically. Basically, fast UI does not, or fast API does not supply this particular component, and it would be kind of complicated for us to re-implement. It would be a lot of remaking the wheel, and there are plenty of good existing lightweight things, and his first example was React Toastify, which is what this is built on. So I think cool. we're simpatico as far as that goes.
Okay, that's reassuring. That's good. Anyone else have any questions or comments?
Cool.
One question.
Just a general note that the previous API decisions might not care too much about being generic and replaceable. But
so
if you're saying that we might want
actually,
to switch to libraries later on, then there might be a good to do like a pass of the the extension, if it exports the token, the API of that to make sure that it's as generic as possible and as little of the internal implementation bleeds through.
So the sort of issue with that right now is the way that Frederick has it set up is the main message that gets displayed, like the actual like text or whatever, is actually just it's like a generic React node. It'll essentially take like any React entity. We might want to have it just be like plain text instead, right? Like it's kind of cool that it could take potentially like any element if someone wanted to do something really custom, but probably it's just like the basic interface, just take text. One way you could handle that would be by having, you know, some commands in the UI components extension that would just offer a way of like popping up a toast via you know, one of our commands. That could just be plain text, and the actual implementation could be something richer.
So in our modal, we accept a whole bunch of types of things. We accept, I think, plain text, widget, and React component, maybe. I can't remember, but it's like 2 or 3 things. Is that appropriate here, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most common use case and the one we should put the most effort into supporting correctly is just plain text, right? That's going to be 95% of uses of this, I imagine. But then somebody might want like an emoji or like a cool icon afterwards or whatever, and it would be nice if there's room to customize.
It's going to be plain text as long as you also get to do something with it, right? Like a notification comes up because it wants you to do something, even if it's just focus on the notebook that generated it or something.
Okay, yeah. So the way that's currently set up, so you could either build that into the node that you're using as the message, or there's also support for generic buttons. We just supply like a name and a function.
There are 2 questions in the chat. So how does this relate to Jupyter Events? And
it does
can
not.
we have buttons with commands as previously discussed? It would help with LSP.
Buttons
so okay. I can answer the
currently?
first one with Jupyter Events. So Jupyter Events is way upstream of this. We will have to have a JupyterLab notifications server extension that subscribes to events and then reads and writes to a database that is for notification purposes. Now that
it'll still have to show up visually somehow downstream. Right?
That's right. So that'll be the back end for a front end that will use this component to show you notifications as they arise. And also there will be a corresponding notifications panel in your sidebar where they collect, right? So this is one piece of that notifications front end is the toast. The other piece of it is like a little sidebar where you can see either the more details or whatever the next action is, or whatever you missed when you were out or whatever. I don't have an answer for the second one though. Maybe Max does.
I thought we could have buttons with commands. I'm trying to think of an example. Like this, like the toolbar for the notebook has like the save command and stuff, right? Am I missing something?
I'm sorry, address that again.
Well, you can have a button that triggers a arbitrary command from our command palette, right?
Yeah, so there are routines for making toolbar buttons and building a button based from a command using the icon and the caption and whatever, right? I don't, so we can definitely do that. I'm not sure how much of it is directly reusable and how much you would implement it yourself.
Like
so I'd say if you wanted to use the label instead of the icon, for example, right? I'm not sure which would be most appropriate, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing or the most packaged up thing that does that currently, there's like a component called like toolbar command button or something. But it's like specifically like a toolbar button as opposed to anything else. Yeah, I mean, we could just have like a command button type or something more generic. Does that answer your question, Michael?
Yeah, so I was referring to the way that's come up with our the API is in dialog. So
Sorry, what?
In the dialog component, I will send the text because my mic is off.
Okay. Why don't we move on?
Sounds good.
Thanks, Max. Isabella, you're up.
Yep, it's me. Hello, hello. I am here to remind you that this month, August's Jupyter Community Call will be coming up next week, Tuesday. Time zone is in the link in the agenda. I know it is 7 a.m. Pacific. I think we have a few things on the agenda, but we definitely have space for more. So if there's something you're excited to share, I know we've been cycling through times. Maybe this will be a good time for some people again. Of course, though, you are welcome to attend and not share anything. I think all of you have heard my spiel before. I'm recognizing these names, but just in case, this is kind of a show and tell for cross-project in the community, where we show off and get excited about people's work, share kind of big community ideas. Yeah, so hope to see you all there. And I think that's all I have. Is it not on the calendar? Let me go check.
I don't see it.
I may have
Alright.
accidentally deleted it in editing it at some point. That is always a possibility, I know. So I'm checking right now.
I see it on August 30th at
Oh,
3
is it
p.m.
not 1 week and I can't count? You're right.
Yeah, I see August 30th, 7 a.m.
I mean, this just shows how absolutely not at all scrambled I've been lately. So thanks for catching that. It's 2 weeks then and I can't count. So thank you.
So the 30th is correct?
The 30th is correct. That's my
Oh, good.
mistake. I can't figure out what's happening, I guess. At least there's some humor for this recording. There you go. It was just one extensive, I don't know, some kind of skit. So yeah, no, I was wrong. Thank you. I would have showed up and been like, what's happening? So this is good.
You're
There you go.
welcome. You don't forget to smash the like.
Yeah. In that
Oh, I
case, you
can't.
all have more time to really impress me with your share, your attendance. So yeah, thank you.
Well, to be fair, they have as long as there is between the community call and when I post this on YouTube, and that is an unknown quantity right now. So
Yeah.
all right. Would anyone else like to talk about something before we move on to the additional discussion section? Oh, you know what? There's 16 people on the call. Can I ask if anyone on the call knows how to and is inclined to, please cut a Lumino to alpha. If you don't know how to, that's fine. I'll get around to it myself. But hey, I'm all about asking people for help. Right, so no one? Additional discussion time. No discussion needed. FYI, iPyWidgets 8 is being released this week. Awesome, well done. iPyWidgets 8 team. Even if there's no discussion, does anyone want to describe it in any more detail? Very well then. Okay. Oh, what's happening? Someone's typing something. I'll jump to the next point and come back. Lab 4.0 release timeline estimate. So can I tell you, I want to stop the recording right now because anything we say that's recorded is more of a commitment than what we say and is not recorded about when we're going to release JupyterLab 4. However, you know, let's walk on the wild side. When are we releasing JupyterLab 4?
When are we releasing Lumino 2? That was not like a holding people against, it's just that's required first, right? Is that a blocker at all?
It's a blocker, but it's not blocking us because we have so many critical path things for JupyterLab 4 that are still outstanding that I think we can get Lumino 2 in pretty quickly. And the biggest pieces of that Lumino 2 project are accomplished already. So I think we're ready to do alphas. Probably within 2 weeks, we're ready to do either betas or RCs. Yeah, I don't think that will be something that holds JupyterLab 4 back, but there's a lot. What was it? 86 outstanding pull requests. At least some of those are critical for JupyterLab 4.
So looking at the milestone, there's 151 open issues or pull requests.
Right.
A lot of them are probably not blocking, that people have just put their 4.0 because they want it to be there, or it's the next release. So I haven't, I haven't been triaging these issues. So I don't know. But a lot of them is follow-ups to some of the major features that have already kind of gone in on the main branch and definitely would need doing. The question is, of course, is whether any of those are big features that was planned for 4.0, but that nobody has really done anything on and can be bumped off the milestone, or should be bumped off the milestone.
I think that maybe in an upcoming call soon, we should have another triaging of those issues and see whether they need to be done for 4.0 or they can be for 4.x or something else. And I think in terms of rough estimates, it is mid-August, and I think in the back of my own mind, it's always been we're releasing JupyterLab 4 this year. And that still remains my intuition. Does anyone feel that's implausible at this point? I know we have a lot to do, but we've also got a lot of things in. The refactor of the RTC stuff is very close to landing. And that was a difficult hurdle. It fixes a bunch of stuff and it also removes some deprecated APIs. The CodeMirror 6 work was a big hurdle, and that's in. Jupyter LSP was a big hurdle, and that's in. They all have knock-on effects. That's right. So virtual notebook is not in yet, right? It's still under development, I think. And Lumino 2 is not in yet. And, RTC has more to do still. There's no notion of events or notifications in yet, but to be honest, those are purely additive. If it turned out we can't ship with that, I wouldn't hold up JupyterLab 4 for that. I'd put that in a 4.1 or something. So yeah, I don't know. Does anyone else have thoughts?
Is there a dependency on Jupyter Server 2.0? I assume that's the case.
Yeah, that's my assumption too.
I as far as my understanding is, that will be. We should hope that that's out before, but there also the notification or the event bus, their work is still outstanding, I think.
Yeah, although in that case too, it might be purely additive. You could imagine a 2.1 that has it if we're simply trying to make sure we deliver a minimum viable server to lab for notebook 7 that won't have us waiting for the next major version to release features that are near landing, but not quite there. So it might be that we can ship server 2 and then have events being 2.1, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. I think events is close to landing. Anyone else thoughts?
Just voicing, you asked, like, does it seem wrong to say end of year? I don't have a lot of authority, but I'm agreeing with you, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's not like an authority question. It's just like, am I crazy for thinking this sort of question? So,
No, but I mean, I don't have like a bunch of PRs open or something where I can say confidently, like, oh, yes, I know the status of this, but yeah, just giving you a thumbs up, I guess.
cool. Okay. It looks like we've got nothing else on the agenda. I'll wait a minute before stopping the recording. No, I won't wait a whole minute. I'll wait some number of seconds. If there's anything you'd like to raise before I stop the recording. Okay, brace yourselves.